where I am, God is. Where I stand, God is standing strong. Where I breathe, God is breathing life in and out and through me, as me.
So the truth is, God is. Wherever I am, God is. Wherever I breathe, God is. Wherever I open my heart, God is. There's a bumper sticker I saw many years ago that I always loved. See it every now and again. It says, if you can't find God, who moved? God doesn't move. God is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. God is. God is. The very breath we breathe is God. You cannot get away from God except by yourself, through your mind, through your intellect, through your inability. There's a new word for you. Your inability to feel God is only in your mind and your emotions. And the truth is, God already is. God is everywhere present. You cannot get away from God. So if you don't feel God right now in this very moment, or you don't feel God somewhere in your life ever over the last year or the next coming year, just remember it wasn't God that moved. So when you can't find God, then what? When you can't find God, you have friends who call, right? That's right. When you can't find God, you don't even know to call your friends, right? 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 You just get stuck in your stuff. Anybody get stuck in their stuff this week? Just curious. Oh, a couple of us this week. Okay, good. Good. Anybody get stuck in their stuff in the last month? Anybody? Oh, a couple others. Okay. Some of us were the same. That was the same. Okay, now we can learn how to get not stuck in our stuff, right? Last week we started a 2-part series called, When Life Happens. Just about forgot. Almost had a life happen moment. When life happens. When life happens, when you're on your spiritual journey and you've had awakenings and you've opened your heart and you've stepped in to a whole new way of being in consciousness for you and for yourself, and then you're going along and everything's going beautifully and everything's working and your health is working and your finances are working and your career's working and your relationships are working. Well, guess what that's a setup for? Something. Well, when everything's working, it's a setup for something to not work. And then when something doesn't work, that's the opportunity for growth. That's the opportunity to step into the next level of being. And so the journey continues. And the journey continues. And the journey continues. So when we were born, when we were little itty-bitty babies, there was something that we needed. We needed our food, and we needed our sleep, and we needed our diapers changed. But really what we needed as itty-bitty babies is love. And there's studies done through the orphanages, and there's studies done, all kinds of studies about the babies who were given love. Or maybe you could say, were given the opportunity to give and receive love. Because some of those little babies who didn't even have the physical touch, if they had something else, like a teddy bear or some other thing, object, that they could give and receive love with and to, and of course human love is the best. Well, it's next best to God's love. But, humans is the way that we feel and experience God's love, right? And so we have all this love, and it is the love that allows us to thrive. And when we're itty-bitty babies, and my granddaughter, oh my gosh, my precious little granddaughter, who is I think 27 months old now or something, so like 2 years and 3 months, and she doesn't talk very much yet, although she's starting to talk all the time. You just don't always understand her until you've been with her for a while. So she calls me up this morning, and she's done this periodically, and she gets a hold of my daughter's phone, and somehow she dials me. I love it when that happens. And then they hang up, right? And I call my daughter back, and I said, well, the mother kicks in. The grandmother kicks in, oh, Jaden called, and then the mother kicks in, oh no, what's wrong? Don't call me on a Sunday morning, right? I mean, that's not the best time for me to just sit and chat. And I said, oh, well, did Jaden call? She goes, yeah, Jaden called. I said, okay, well, I'm trying to get out the door, so I'll call you later. Okay. The phone rings again. She called me again. I said, JJ, it's Gregra. She goes, Gregra? I get to go see her. I'll see her probably Wednesday, and she's just the most precious thing in the world. And she knows nothing but love so far. She still gets, she has her life, her life happens, and she gets mad, and she cries, and she has this little temper, this little Aries temper that already shows up. She knows what she wants, this little girl, and she is bound and determined to get it. I'm thinking, oh boy, paybacks for my daughter. I can't wait. Anyway, little sidebar there on the grandbabies. So we're born knowing God's love. We come onto this planet knowing that we are love, that we are the living, loving expression of God, that we are individualized expressions of God. And we know when we're born on this planet, we know that we are magnificent beings. And that it is an opportunity, a gift to come onto this planet. That we are here to fly and soar and swim and dive and make a wonderful, incredible difference on this planet. We know that when we're born. Or we know that before we're born. Right? And then life happens and we grow up and some of us forget. Any of you forget? Did any of you forget? Yeah. We forget, but you know what happens? It's not only just that we forget. A couple things happens. One, it's sort of set up that way because I believe our purpose on this planet is to come to know God. And we know God completely and totally before we come to the planet. But when we come, we have to forget, otherwise it'd be no game. And it's a game. It's much more than a game, but it's a game. We're on this planet. This planet is created, in my belief, to be a planet of experience. And we're come onto this planet to have experience and to come to know God through and in the midst of all those experiences. So the good and the bad, the hot and the cold, the night and the day, the definition of experience is there's opposite of. You cannot know one side without knowing the other, at least at some level. So we forget. We have that mechanism built in to our souls that when we're in human form, we forget. And so the game is we get to remember. Now we can remember like this and be instantaneously enlightened. Anybody say, yes, that's happened to me? Well, many of us have had moments of enlightenment, right? Or we can go through the process of uncovering once again that divine light, that divinity. But what happens over time? Well, let me go to a story. Did any of you last month, there came out, or I saw it last month, a story of, I think it was called Saving Valentine. Valentine was a humpback whale. Did anybody see that story? Some of you saw that story. So this humpback whale, there was some whalers and people who know all about whales out on the Baja, on just a little trip around Valentine's Day, and they came across this whale who looked like it was dead in the water. Now, because he was who he was, he got out of the water and put on his snorkel, and he went, check out what was going on with the whale. I'm not sure I would have done that, but he did. And he was skilled in that, and he had knowledgeable in that. And so what he discovered was that this whale was completely tied up in this nylon netting, that its fins were tied down, that it was completely, enveloped, and couldn't move the fins and couldn't swim, and it really was on the verge of death. And so he had several people with him and one little tiny fishing knife. And they went about this project, so to speak. They went about this task of beginning to free this whale, this huge humpback whale with a little tiny fishing cutting that net, cutting that net, cutting that net, cutting that net. And they got the dorsal fin freed. And then so the whale could breathe even a little bit better, because it was even having a hard time breathing because it couldn't get out of the water to breathe. And they kept cutting, and they kept doing a little bit at a time. And at one point, they got enough free. One of the side fins was freed enough that the whale started swimming. Well, of course, pulling the boat, right? Because they have all this net in the boat, and they're hanging on. And the whale swam for like a half a mile or so, and obviously had a sense of what was going on. When the guy was in the water, he made eye contact with this whale. So there was a soul connection at that level. So the whale came to trust them. And then the whale came right back up to the boat, and they kept cutting, and they kept cutting, and they kept cutting. They got the other side fin, and then they got most of the tail freed. And they ultimately said, okay, I think we have enough now. We can do that final cut and let her go. And so they did that final cut, and they let her go. And she went out just a little ways, not far from the water, and started doing these huge jumps and twists and flips. And she entertained them with joy and gratitude for well over an hour after she was freed. And then they followed her for much longer than that, 4 or 5 more miles out or along the coast before they lost sight of her. But that love and that gratitude that comes in that freedom was beautiful. And to have that soul connection was beautiful. But then I started thinking about the nets, right? And how many of us are these big, beautiful beings who are all tied up in those nylon nets? Those nylon nets, you can't even hardly see them. You know, they're really light colored. But we get all tied up, and we get tied up. And what are our nets? It's our fear. It's our unworthiness. It's what other people think. How about this for a thought? It's what I think other people think I ought to think. Do you know that one? You know, it's the conditions of our life. It's the belief systems that we have. It's all of the stuff that keeps us limited. And so if we take our intention like a little penknife and begin to cut those away, begin to release those limiting beliefs and their beliefs, begin to shift and change that which keeps us small, that keeps us bound, that keeps us unable to fly or soar or swim through life, we begin to cut those apart. We begin to let go of and surrender all things that are neither loving or neutral. Then we will soar. Then we will be being the truth that we're here to be. Because we are here to be the light of the world. We are here as divine expressions of spirit. We are here to come to know our divinity and to be that divinity, not from our thinking, not from our ego, not that we walk around and we can all do this. We can strut around and go, wow, I'm pretty spiritual. And it's not that. That's not it. In fact, if you're doing it, you're probably not very close. But to land in your heart, to free your heart from all the things that keep it bound and tight and closed and protected, to free your heart is to free your divinity. And that's what we're here on the planet to do. That's our purpose on this planet. And we all have life that happens, and we all have situations that stink, and we all have challenges to stand in. But that's the exact time to stand in the challenge, to discover what it is that you're holding as a core belief. And by the way, just because you believe something is no reason it's true. And a lot of the things you believe, probably 90% of what you believe is not true. So let go of your mind. Go a little crazy. Go a little crazy, because what happens as we move along this spiritual path, as we open to our divinity, as we expand our hearts, as we expand our consciousness, what we discover is that it is our very mind that limits us. Okay, well, that's no big news. But the thing is, think about it. We as humankind were created in the image and likeness of God. But we got confused there too, because now We're created in God's image, but all of a sudden, we find ourselves very human and we create God in our image. So we think God is the image of humanity. That's not it. God is so much more than we think God is.